Top 6 actors Tommy Lee Jones hated most. What if I told you that behind that stone-cold stare, gravelly voice, and no-nonsense attitude, Tommy Lee Jones wasn't just playing tough on screen, he was living it off camera too. For decades, this Oscar-winning actor has been one of Hollywood's most respected talents, but also one of its most feared. His intensity didn't stop when the director yelled "cut," and for many co-stars and filmmakers, working with him became a battle of wills they'd never forget. These aren't whispers from gossip columns or unverified rumors. These are real, documented feuds. Clashes so intense they shaped productions and turned into lasting Hollywood legends. By the end of this countdown, you'll never look at Tommy Lee Jones's powerhouse performances the same way again. So let's dive into the 6 shocking, verified cases where colleagues came face to face with Tommy Lee Jones's legendary wrath. Number 1. Jim Carrey. Hollywood has seen its fair share of behind-the-scenes drama, but few clashes are as legendary as the one that erupted on the set of Batman Forever. In 1995, Jim Carrey stood at the very peak of comedy stardom. Fresh off the massive hits Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber, he was commanding a staggering $20 million paycheck to play the Riddler, a role that showcased the wild, unpredictable energy audiences adored him for. Then came Tommy Lee Jones. Cast as Two-Face, the Oscar-winning actor brought a no-nonsense, classically trained intensity to the project. The result? A powder keg. What unfolded wasn't just a matter of clashing egos or small creative disagreements, it was a complete collision of two opposing worlds. Carrey's freewheeling, improvisational madness versus Jones's rigid, disciplined seriousness. And when those worlds met, sparks flew in a way that Hollywood still talks about today. Imagine walking into a restaurant only to be met with one of Hollywood's coldest rejections. That's exactly what happened when Jim Carrey, then at the height of his comedy superstardom, crossed paths with Tommy Lee Jones during the filming of Batman Forever. Carrey recalled the moment in multiple interviews, including on Norm Macdonald Live. "I went up to say hello, and he stood up, looked me right in the eye, and said, 'I cannot sanction your buffoonery.' Then he just walked out." And it wasn't just Carrey's word against silence. Director Joel Schumacher later backed up the story, admitting, "Jim Carrey was a force of nature. Tommy is, and I say this with great respect, a scene stealer. You can't steal scenes from Jim Carrey." Jones himself never denied it. When asked about the encounter in a 2000 interview, he brushed it off with, "I was in a bad mood that day," which for Tommy Lee Jones was as close to confirmation as anyone would get. Unsurprisingly, the two have never worked together again. Proof that sometimes Hollywood just isn't big enough for two titans at once. Number 2. Wesley Snipes. But Carrey wasn't the only star to find himself at odds with Jones. The same combustible energy would later spark a bitter clash with Wesley Snipes during the making of U.S. Marshals. While Snipes was stepping into Harrison Ford's shoes as the fugitive, the real battle was happening off camera. Crew members revealed that Jones and Snipes butted heads almost immediately. Jones fiercely protective of his Oscar-winning character, Snipes equally determined to leave his mark. The result? One of the tensest standoffs either actor ever faced. On set, the sparks weren't just from the explosions or stunt choreography. They came from the stars themselves. The real clash ignited when Wesley Snipes, famous for doing many of his own stunts, butted heads with Tommy Lee Jones over how the action should play out. Behind Snipes' back, production assistants recalled Jones sneeringly calling him the martial arts expert, a jab that made it clear he didn't value his co-star's input. Director Stuart Baird later pulled back the curtain in a 2010 retrospective. "We had two very strong personalities with very different approaches to their work. Tommy is methodical and precise. Wesley is more intuitive and physical, oil and water sometimes." The divide grew so sharp that the actors stopped speaking directly to each other, often resorting to relaying messages through assistants or Baird himself. It wasn't just a disagreement, it was a cold war brewing behind the cameras. It wasn't just icy glances, it was a full-blown Cold War. Crew members later joked that the U.S. Marshals set had all the warmth of the Antarctic. And while the movie did fine at the box office, it never reached the heights of The Fugitive. Some say the reason was simple. The off-screen animosity drained the on-screen chemistry. But Jones's clashes weren't confined to that set. Number 3. Director Joel Schumacher. Tommy Lee Jones's feud with director Joel Schumacher on Batman Forever was so fierce it deserves its own spotlight. Jones wasn't just irritated with Jim Carrey. He had a fundamental problem with Schumacher's entire vision for the film. Fresh off an Oscar win for The Fugitive, Jones expected a gritty, serious Batman story. Instead, he walked into Schumacher's neon-soaked campy take, light years away from Tim Burton's dark and brooding Gotham. According to production designer Barbara Ling, Jones didn't just disagree. He made sure everyone knew exactly how unhappy he was, loudly and often. Imagine walking onto a Hollywood set and seeing an Oscar-winning actor shaking his head in disgust at the costumes and scenery. That was Tommy Lee Jones during Batman Forever. He'd mutter, "This isn't what I signed up for," and the tension only grew from there. Things boiled over while filming Two-Face's more flamboyant scenes, with Jones reportedly telling director Joel Schumacher that his character was being reduced to nothing more than a cartoon. He even had to be convinced to finish certain sequences he felt stripped away the villain's psychological depth. By 1996, Jones didn't bother hiding his disdain. In an interview with Premiere magazine, when asked about the film, he curtly dismissed it as childish before changing the subject. Years later, when asked if he'd ever work with Schumacher again, his blunt reply was simply, "I doubt it." Schumacher, ever diplomatic, admitted in a 2017 anniversary interview that while Jones was an extraordinary actor, perhaps his desire for a layered, complex villain just didn't fit the lighter tone the studio wanted. The fact that Jones refused to even discuss the film in career retrospectives remains one of the clearest signs of how bitter the experience was for him. Number 4, Val Kilmer. But the drama didn't end there. If Jones had little patience for Jim Carrey's manic comedy, his clashes with Batman himself, Val Kilmer, were just as tense, though for entirely different reasons. Kilmer, known for his method acting intensity, threw himself into roles with complete immersion. Jones, who favored precision and technique, reportedly found Kilmer's process pretentious. Crew members later told Vanity Fair the two rarely exchanged words off camera. One assistant described it best: they were like two gunfighters in different corners of the saloon. Imagine two powerhouse actors stepping onto the same set, one obsessed with precision, the other chasing raw emotion. Sparks were bound to fly. Tommy Lee Jones thought Val Kilmer was being overly dramatic for what was, at the end of the day, a superhero movie. Kilmer, meanwhile, believed Jones wasn't giving enough weight to the psychological depth of their characters. The tension boiled over during a pivotal Batman and Two-Face showdown. Kilmer asked for multiple takes to experiment with different emotional tones, but Jones, clearly irritated, cut him off for everyone to hear. "I've made 7 films this year. I don't have time for this nonsense." First assistant director William M. Elvin later confirmed what many on set suspected. These were two strong actors with completely different approaches. Tommy comes prepared with every line perfect and expects the same. Val likes to find the moment while filming. It created natural friction. What makes this clash unforgettable isn't just the on-set fireworks, but the aftermath. Kilmer has so thoroughly erased Jones from his professional history that it's as if the collaboration never happened at all. Val Kilmer didn't just shade Tommy Lee Jones, he erased him. In his 2020 memoir, I'm Your Huckleberry, Kilmer dives deep into his Batman Forever experience, yet somehow manages never to mention Jones at all. Not once. The silence is deafening, and in Hollywood, omission often screams louder than any insult. On the flip side, when Jones was asked about Kilmer during the film's press tour, his response was a dagger wrapped in ice. "I worked with Batman. I didn't work with Mr. Kilmer." Short, sharp, brutal. That single line summed up a professional frostbite that's lingered for nearly 3 decades without melting. But this wasn't the only time Tommy Lee Jones turned a film set into a battlefield. Number 5, Sally Field. Take 2012's Lincoln. Director Steven Spielberg brought together an all-star cast, including Jones as abolitionist Thaddeus Stevens and Sally Field as Mary Todd Lincoln. On paper, their pairing promised fireworks. Behind the scenes, though, it was a clash of acting philosophies. Field's raw, emotional method colliding head-on with Jones's precise technical approach. From the very first table read, the tension was undeniable. On the set of Lincoln, sparks flew, but not always the kind you'd expect. Behind the camera, Tommy Lee Jones and Sally Field couldn't have been more different in their acting styles, and it showed. According to crew members who later spoke to The Hollywood Reporter, Jones dismissed deep emotional preparation as unnecessary. Field, on the other hand, went all in. During one tense scene, Field stayed in character between takes, continuing to address Jones as Mr. Stevens, while carrying Mary Todd's raw, agitated energy long after the director called cut. Finally, Jones broke, telling her bluntly, "Sally, the camera's not rolling. You can stop now." Field later confirmed the clash in a 2016 interview with The Guardian, admitting, Tommy isn't warm and fuzzy. Let's just say we had very different approaches, and sometimes that created friction. But here's the twist. Sometimes friction makes the fire burn brighter. Despite the behind-the-scenes tension, their on-screen chemistry was undeniable. Their charged exchanges became some of the most unforgettable moments in Lincoln, with Jones even earning an Oscar nomination for his performance. During the film's promotional tour, Jones spoke with his usual bluntness when asked about working with co-star Sally Field, saying she was very dedicated to her process. But even those diplomatic words carried a frost journalists couldn't ignore. Number 6. Steven Seagull. Under Siege cast Seagull as the Navy cook-turned-action hero, while Jones took on the role of a mercenary villain. On paper, it was perfect. In practice, it was chaos. From day one, the set was charged with tension. Director Andrew Davis later admitted in an Empire retrospective that Jones, fresh off his Oscar nomination for JFK, had little patience for Seagull's limited range. Meanwhile, Seagull, then riding high as one of Hollywood's biggest action stars, demanded control over everything, especially how unbeatable he looked on screen. It wasn't just a clash of fists on screen, it was a battle of egos behind the camera. The real fight didn't happen in the script, but in the choreography room. Stunt coordinators later confirmed that Tommy Lee Jones and Steven Seagull couldn't agree on how their climactic showdown should play out. Seagull, clinging to his action hero persona, wanted to dominate completely. Jones, however, felt that would strip his character of any credibility as a true adversary. The problem? Seagull had a notorious contract clause stating he could never lose a fight on screen. Stunt coordinator Stephen Lambert revealed that Seagull went so far as to literally count the punches, tracking every hit he took versus the ones he delivered, just to guarantee he came out on top. To Jones, the whole thing was ridiculous. At one point, Jones reportedly turned to the director and deadpanned, "I didn't realize I was making a movie with someone who's never allowed to get hit." Crew members say the sharp line landed harder than any punch. Things escalated when Jones finally snapped during a heated exchange and told Seagull point blank, "I'm an actor, not a prop for you to look good against." Delivered with Jones's trademark intensity, the words froze the entire set into silence. The feud grew so intense that crew members actually started placing bets on which star would lose his temper first. Weapons master Bill Davis later recalled one unforgettable moment. There was a day when they were both in the weapons room at the same time, and you could cut the tension with a knife. Imagine being on set and feeling the air tighten, everyone holding their breath, unsure if they were about to witness a full-blown Hollywood meltdown. That's exactly how tense things became. Producer J.F. Lilton later admitted the solution was drastic. The two stars were kept apart whenever possible, their shared scenes filmed only when absolutely unavoidable. It was like keeping two alpha predators in separate cages, he explained. You only put them together when the cameras were rolling. The tension carried beyond the set. During the press tour, Jones and Seagull were never once paired for interviews, a shocking move for the leads of a blockbuster action film. When asked about his co-star, Jones would dodge the question, mutter a vague no comment, or shift the conversation elsewhere. Years later, in a rare moment of honesty, Jones finally broke his silence. Asked directly about Seagull, he gave a cutting reply. "Let's just say there are actors, and there are those who think they are actors." It was the clearest glimpse into the core of their feud. Jones's deep disdain for what he saw as Seagull's lack of respect for the craft. And that's the real story here. This wasn't just Hollywood gossip. It revealed a recurring pattern in Tommy Lee Jones's career, a relentless clash with co-stars who didn't match his intensity. For Jones, acting wasn't about ego or image. It was a discipline, a craft demanding preparation, precision, and absolute seriousness. Not everyone survives working alongside Tommy Lee Jones. Those who come at the craft from a different angle, whether it's comedy, method acting, or action hero bravado, have often found themselves in his line of fire. And what's most fascinating, Jones never wasted his energy on small targets. Every feud he ever sparked was with Hollywood heavyweights, Oscar winners, box office giants, or powerhouse directors. It's almost as if the bigger the name, the higher his standards soared. These weren't petty disagreements or backstage gossip. They were clashes so intense they disrupted productions, reshaped casting decisions, and in some cases permanently redirected Jones's career. Directors began thinking twice before pairing him with certain actors. Studios calculated his temperament into their budgets, and the stories from these battles, they've taken on a legendary life of their own in Hollywood circles. But here's the real question. In a business that thrives on collaboration, when does artistic integrity cross the line into destructive friction? Can uncompromising standards elevate the craft, or do they risk tearing it apart? Love him or loathe him, there's one undeniable truth about Tommy Lee Jones. His refusal to fake it has made him one of the most authentically uncompromising figures in Hollywood. Hollywood is full of polished smiles and carefully crafted images. But Tommy Lee Jones never played that game. He's a relic of an earlier era, when stars weren't afraid to ruffle feathers or speak their minds, even if it made them unpopular. And yet, here's the twist. Despite his reputation for being difficult, Jones has never struggled to find work. Directors still cast him, actors still sign on to share the screen with him. And audiences? They keep showing up, captivated. Why? Because the very qualities that make Jones a challenge behind the scenes are the same ones that make him magnetic on screen. His ruthless honesty and his refusal to compromise. Even those who clashed with him can't help but respect him. Sally Field admitted his raw talent was undeniable. Joel Schumacher, though he vowed never to work with him again, praised his sheer dedication. And Jim Carrey, despite a frosty rejection, conceded Jones's devotion to the craft was unmatched. Perhaps the biggest proof of all? The directors who've experienced his fiery intensity firsthand still return to him, knowing that the storm he brings behind the camera often translates into brilliance in front of it. Think about it. When directors like the Coen brothers, Oliver Stone, and Steven Spielberg keep bringing you back, it's not by accident. They know Tommy Lee Jones can be difficult, even intimidating, but they also know the end result is worth it. Jones himself once summed it up in a brutally honest line. "I don't need to be liked, I need to be good at what I do." That mindset has cost him friends, but it's also won him an Oscar, 4 nominations, and a reputation as one of Hollywood's most uncompromising talents. And with that, we've reached the end of our look at the 6 most explosive conflicts of his career. From comedy legends to Oscar-winning peers, every feud tells the same story. Jones never cared about being popular, only about protecting the craft. At the end of the day, Tommy Lee Jones's career is proof that Hollywood legends aren't built on charm alone. They're built on raw talent, uncompromising standards, and yes, sometimes on the battles that happen when the cameras stop rolling. His feuds may be infamous, but they're also part of what makes his story unforgettable. So what do you think? Is Tommy Lee Jones a fearless protector of the craft, or just too difficult for his own good? Let us know in the comments. Make sure to like the video and subscribe. We've got plenty more untold stories of the stars you love coming your way.